Welcome back for our second day of capstones. Our first capstone today is by Dylan Myers, and this is his thesis statement. While the desire to improve oneself can be rooted in discipline, the self-improvement movement on social media presents a harmful representation that a person's worth is based entirely on their own ability, which often becomes a source of pride, diminishing one's desire to be charitable. Please welcome Dylan.
Imagine this. You are a young man who grew up struggling with his appearance, only wanting to feel better about how he looks. Every day you doom scroll on social media, seeing models and influencers who seem to be living the dream life. You spent countless hours on social media studying how you can improve your looks, no matter what cost it may take. After years of obsession and seemingly achieving your goal of looking better and posting your journey online, you become one of the most famous influencers and live streamers. Viewers look at you as a source of hope and knowledge, hoping to one day improve their life just as you did. Underneath this persona, the truth is hidden in plain sight. Online, you don't promote the improvement for what is good. You promote the use of drugs, dangerous cosmetics, and a spirit of pride for the sake of flaunting your looks, status, and wealth over others, or as social media would call it, blogging. This is the story of Braden Peters, who goes by the name Clavicular online. Born in 2005, he is now a famous influencer on social media. As his online presence continued to grow, a series of controversial incidents further demonstrated the darker side of how he promoted a disordered view of self-improvement. Clavicular didn't just promote that people ought to focus on their looks more, or that they should go to the gym more often. He went further. He promoted the use of drugs such as methamphetamine as a way to suppress appetite. He live-streamed himself performing dangerous cosmetic injections on others. He even was seen during the live stream to drive forward while an individual was on or near the hood of the car, seemingly running them over. These incidents show that the motivations and goals behind Clavicular's idea of self-improvement are disordered. Clavicular serves as an example of how deceiving growth in any aspect of life can appear, especially online. While the desire to improve oneself can be rooted in discipline and growth, the self-improvement movement on social media presents a harmful representation that a person's worth is based entirely on their own ability, which often becomes a source of pride, taking away from one's desire to be charitable. This modern phenomenon of disordered growth forces us to ask a difficult question. How do we actually define what is good for us? Self-improvement is presented on social media in many different ways, yet it often fails to show what good character truly is, or how one should decide whether certain improvements are actually worthwhile or morally right to make. There is no universal agreement across social media platforms as to what constitutes good character. Anyone attempting to make substantial changes in their life may, especially regarding who they are as a person, may look to social media for advice. Others may be motivated by social media to enact new changes they had not thought of previously. To understand how we've reached this point and how we can find ourselves back to a true sense of growth, I will first be breaking down the understanding of self-improvement into 3 parts. First, we will look at the philosophical and theological foundations of character by examining Aristotle's philosophy and St. Thomas Aquinas' proper end for the human person. Second, we will explore the psychology of habit and the iterative mindset, identifying how social media can trap many in a cycle of upward comparison and vanity. Finally, we will contrast the vice of pride with the virtue of charity, showing how each provides the structure of disordered and ordered self-improvement. To begin, it is essential to understand that self-improvement ought to ultimately aid a person in reaching their true end or final goal, which according to Aristotle is the idea of eudaimonia. This idea comes from Aristotle's understanding that everything has a telos, or an end. For example, people usually eat better to be healthier, become healthier to have more energy, and have more energy to work better, and so forth and so on. This line of reasoning can never be satisfied. Eudaimonia is Aristotle's conclusion that there must be a final end, or something that one desires for its own sake, which he concludes is essentially true happiness. Within this understanding, truly improving oneself means bringing oneself closer to that proper end. In order for this improvement to truly impact one's character, which marks true change, it has to be substantial enough to affect the habitual aspects of one's life. Otherwise, its effects aren't present in times when one falls back onto those habits. Aristotle explains how one's character is a culmination of habit, which is developed from one's environment growing up and further expanded on in the choice to develop new ones or get rid of old ones. While Aristotle provides the philosophical foundation, St. Thomas Aquinas realizes this concept by identifying the true, specific, proper end toward which all human life must be ordered. In the Summa Theologia, Aquinas argues that while physical health and intellectual growth are good, they are only proximate ends that cannot fully satisfy the human heart. He says that moral acts precede their species from the end, meaning that the very nature of one's self-improvement is defined by what is present within their goals. Ultimately, Aquinas reveals that the truly proper end is not just a vague sense of flourishing, as defined by Aristotle, but instead the perfect knowledge and love of God. In this sense, any self-improvement that does not eventually point towards God or the service of others is essentially a dead virtue. With this proper end in mind, in order to efficiently build habits and make substantial change, it is important to understand how habits are formed and the importance of accepting failure as a part of the process. Social media and pressure from family or community, which can unfortunately be common in places such as JPG, can often give the impression that failure is something to frown upon or avoid at all costs. The truth is quite the opposite. Many psychologists have explored the idea of self-improvement through what they call an iterative mindset. They define this mindset as a continuous process of growth that emphasizes the cycle of failure, assessment, adjustment, and retrying. This framework combats these misunderstandings by labeling failure as essential. This mindset, used alongside knowledge of psychology behind habit formation, provides a stable background for self-improvement to take place. Psychologists Wendy Wood and Dennis Runker provide an article they wrote, a system of how habits work and their implications regarding long-term goals. The main takeaway from the system is that habits are automatic responses to certain contexts, meaning once formed, they require no conscious decision. It also explains how, since they are automatic, the desired outcome or ultimate goal of the habit that was initially formed to reach is no longer taken into account after it is set. This allows any type of habit, whether bad or good, to respond in certain contexts effortlessly, making it imperative that each person understands the habits that make up their person and to what end those habits point towards. On the bright side, this model then provides a solution for how habits can be formed and broken. Since the outcome is not taken into account, simple willpower or conscious choice will usually not suffice. Instead, one must remove or diminish the context that causes the response to occur. For instance, you might have a habit of scrolling social media in the morning because your phone is right next to you. To uproot this habit, you should place your phone in another room before going to sleep, effectively removing that context. Discipline is the primary virtue behind this growth. It is the central focal point in which all improvement is built upon, whether that improvement is correctly ordered or not. It allows one to consistently choose improvement without the need for motivation, making it necessary for anyone attempting change. Social media does indeed place an emphasis on the need for discipline, but fails to follow through in teaching the truly good end and final goal of improvement. Discipline, when separate from a good end, can manifest trends on social media. A relatively new trend on social media that goes by the name Wix-maxing has blown up in popularity over the last few years. This trend has been spearheaded by figures like Clavicular and places physical appearance above all else. The main idea behind this trend is that you will be treated better or achieve more in life by simply looking better. Although there may be some truth to this in certain instances, the trend is overall defined by an unhealthy obsession over appearance, rather than just deciding to pay a bit more attention to it. As seen in Clavicular, social media generally does not provide a good foundation for what is actually attaining through serious effort. In my own personal experience, I've grown up looking at gym influencers as a source of motivation. Although it is healthy to work out and to take care of your body, the obsession of it only leads to dissatisfaction. No matter what people would say, I would always find myself not good enough. Seeing bodybuilders and extreme examples of physical prowess online bolstered this issue. I caught myself focusing so much on what I could do next to improve how big I am, rather than that which truly satisfies, which is God. Social media can be cunning in how this happens, because it can provide effective means to achieve these disordered goals, making it truly productive, just towards the wrong ends. Similar to myself, many teenagers have fallen into the misunderstanding that since improvement is being made, it must be good. Content is created online to consistently push the idea that one cannot be happy until they achieve a certain material possession or physical well-being. Algorithms focus on what is engaging, inspirational, and emotionally stimulating. This means users often see idealized images of success, fitness, and wealth, portrayals of which lack context but still create many standards for young people to compare their lives against. Carter McComb explains in a meta-analysis how social media shows strong evidence of the psychological harm caused by this upward comparison explained previously. Trends such as the looks maxing trend are just one example of how disordered self-improvement has settled in social media and brought many to fall into the trap of putting so much effort into what they are told will finally make them happy, only to be left unsatisfied and looking for more. Looks maxing in specific essentially praises pride at face value through quote-unquote logging. That is, a term used when one flaunts or makes clear how much better they are in any aspect. This term provides insight into the true source of disordered self-improvement and why it is so detrimental to one's relationship with God. This brings us to the root of the problem: pride. Pride has long been understood as the most dangerous vice, not because it's always outwardly visible, but because it can disguise itself as excellence, as seen in these trends throughout social media. Habits that appear admirable, such as working out and eating healthy, become spiritually hollow when motivated by pride. It is this idea alone that almost every instance of disordered self-improvement online can be traced back to. For example, Clavicular desired to improve because he wanted attention, wealth, and to be above others, all of which lack fulfillment and usually bring one further away from their proper end. In direct contrast to pride, Aquinas identifies charity as the greatest of all virtues. Charity orders all of their virtues towards their proper end, which is union with God. For those who struggle with pride or have spent so much time in improving themselves only to realize it was ultimately prideful, charity can be used to direct that virtue of discipline towards something truly good. In life, this can look like someone improving physically for the sake of being a good father figure for their family, or forming habits of almsgiving for the sake of the poor. Goals oriented towards pride would instead improve themselves physically to look down on others, or give money to the poor to flaunt how charitable they appear. Within this mindset of improvement that places charity as the goal, fulfillment is then found in placing others above oneself and ultimately becoming in union with God. This reorientation of the heart is not a one-time event, but a daily commitment. Charitable self-improvement can be extremely hard to achieve, especially in today's society that values just about everything else. Building habits to have structure in your life to serve others and God is the simple foundation of combating pride throughout social media. Understanding Aristotle's and Aquinas' ideas regarding the formation of character, habits, and the proper end toward which all acts should follow is the first step in this goal. Using failure as a tool for growth and seeing its position as a part of the process alongside the iterative mindset provides a great tool set for actualizing goals and habits. Social media is deceiving in how it presents self-improvement. I urge the youth to put true thought and prayer into what they strive for, looking past what seems to be improvement on the surface level. Not all self-improvement is really improvement at all. If your self-improvement makes you look down on your neighbor, it's not growth, it's pride. If your discipline only serves your vanity, it's a dead virtue. True flourishing is not found in building yourself up for the sake of being above others. It's found in doing so to give yourself completely to others, just as Christ did on the cross. Thank you.
What faculty questions do we have first?
Mr. Hanson?
Thanks for your presentation. I'm interested in your idea of iterative growth and the idea that failure in that process is essential. And I'm curious if you found, it almost seems in your description of the social media circumstances or the world in which we live, that these influencers and people you describe are not showing the failure part of the sort of discoveries or the things that they've sort of identified to make them successful. They're only showing the successful part, right? So I'm curious if you could say more about how we should think about failure say like riding a bike and needing to take the risk of falling off a couple times. In the journey of sort of accomplishing anything virtuous as you described.
Thank you for your question. So on social media specifically, the way things are oriented in short form content especially, the reason that I bring it up for the main part is that because content is such short form, usually only 10 to 15 second long videos, most of the time, even if they say that they experienced a lot of failure in their journey, you don't really get to see that process laid out in front of you. You only see how they are now. Sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Oh, I just was curious if you could say, more about, the necessity of failure as a thing we could learn from. Maybe if we're trying to pursue our own things, not to forget that part.
Yeah, I think in any aspect you can apply failure as an essential part of it. So, for instance, students over here might get a bad grade on one test. Instead of being down about that and continuing and doing bad on their next test, they should instead see how things went wrong, see how they can improve, and then try again regardless of that failure.
Thank you.
No problem. Mr. Baker?
Thanks for the presentation, Dylan. It seems like social media, as it's currently manifested, incentivizes this kind of prideful flaunting in terms of short form and the stuff you talked about. So I'm curious, are there any positive examples of social media actors out there who do this correctly, or is it something that should just be avoided by the youth?
Thank you for your question. So I don't have any clear-cut examples of this happening on social media just because it is so rampant. So I would say that if your goal is to have good self-improvement, look at these influencers as sources of motivation, but don't inherit their goals. Don't view their goals as inherently good. A lot of these influencers do have their journeys outlined on other platforms such as YouTube, where you can see further into their how they got to this point. So I would suggest just doing your research, having good examples such as the saints, Jesus. All of these figures give us actual clear-cut examples that are oriented towards the virtuous means of self-improvement. Miss Lisa.
Thank you for your presentation, Dylan. I was thinking that even with the language of social media trends or movements, there's something kind of transitory in that language, something that will, maybe describe growth or decrease. So I'm wondering, with these trends, do you see it as something that's on an upward trajectory, these harmful trends are increasing, or do you see it as something that maybe is popular right now but will wane? Perhaps, for instance, I was also thinking of social media. Whenever I was growing up in the MySpace world, there are things that were popular then that people would think were super cringe nowadays. So do you see this harmful behavior as something that is growing and increasing, or something that will wane in the future?
Thank you for your question. It definitely is something that's growing and will likely continue to grow. Just over the last few years, with how short form content has sort of become mainstream, even just 7 years ago, we didn't really have TikTok as prevalent, and so you don't have these shorter videos that just show the successful parts of somebody's journey or show these really extreme versions of self-improvement. So it is something that will likely continue to grow with how TikTok and these other platforms are just gaining popularity. Even a few years ago, this was always something kind of around, especially on the feminine side of things. It was definitely in pop culture that women ought to focus so completely on how they appear physically. Now it is just becoming something that applies to everybody and is very mainstream.
Thank you.
Mr. Young?
Thank you for your presentation, Dylan. I especially appreciated your section on the philosophical idea of eudaimonia. And so I'm interested if you can clarify, it seems as though eudaimonia is the attainment of our telos or telos, our end. And so I'm wondering, what is the perceived telos, you think, of these influencers versus the telos or the telos, however you pronounce it, that we believe to be true? So can you maybe describe those two perceptions of a person's end?
Thank you for your question. So on social media, the perceived telos of most of these influencers is usually very worldly, secular things. So physical appearance, wealth, success, popularity online. But in our instance, what should actually be attained is union with God, and that's done through charity or service of others. So.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question, if that's all right. In your research, did you find any maybe foundations for this misperception of telos of these influencers?
Can you clarify your question?
Yeah, like it seems as though, and I guess maybe I'm just thinking through the lens of American history. We've had, as Bennett Williams said in his Capstone yesterday, an obsession with self-sufficiency and work. And I'm wondering if that came up in your research as a reason why people have become so obsessed with this self-perfection in a disordered way. Does that make sense?
Thank you for your question. I haven't really researched too much into the actual background of it, like you explained, how American ideals usually place individualism and self-success over everything else. So it is very likely a result of that. But seeing how this is something that's happening worldwide, it's not just in America, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly where it stemmed from. But like I stated in the end of my capstone, the ultimate source of it is pride. So it's just to be careful of that and to point it towards charity instead.
Thank you, Dylan.
Are there any senior questions? All right, thank you, Dylan.